Welcome. Derek Rydall here, founder of the Law of Emergence and author of the best-selling book Emergence and the Abundance Project. I feel compelled to share my heart and my thoughts in the light of the recent school shooting, and not so much to get into a political conversation about it, although maybe I'll touch upon some of that, but to begin to learn how to see through the lens of the divine, to see the underlying deeper causes and ultimately deeper principles at work for those of you that are truth seekers and truth students and truth teachers and healers and coaches, or just human beings that want to not perpetuate the pain and suffering in this world and want to actually in some way reduce it. So whoever you are, that's for you. And I don't really exactly know where we'll go in this video, but I want to first just start off with, as I said in the description, I know firsthand what it feels like to lose a child. I don't know what it feels like to lose it under these circumstances, and there is a whole other horror. But I do know what it feels like to lose a child, and it is a pain and a suffering that it's not of this world. You know, it's like having your soul torn out through your heart piece by piece every day for a long time. And so the first thing I want to just say is, and invite us all, is to truly hold these parents in our hearts and these families and the loved ones of all those that are lost. And yes, I know it's become a cliche to say thoughts and prayers, because mostly it is just a cliche and a political expedient statement to make. So I'm not saying it lightly when I ask us to hold these parents in our prayers and in our hearts, and to actually, for all of you spiritual warriors, really truly do that work of holding them in your hearts and in your minds. And I want to take it one step further, and that we also stretch a little, perhaps, as painful as it may be, and hold the perpetrators, in this case, the perpetrator, in our hearts. There's been a string of these shootings this year, I think over 100 and some in just this country, America alone, a variety of things: school shootings, supermarket shootings, some of them driven by, racism, xenophobia, others driven by just madness that I hopefully will touch upon in this video a bit, and what our part is in it. And I'm also going to speak, not, obviously there's certain political and practical things we need, like some sober gun control. You have to get a license to cut your hair, but you barely need to learn anything or pass any test to have a gun. So yes, we definitely need that. I'm not an expert in that subject, and so I don't really want to talk too much about that. And so I'm mostly speaking to those that are perhaps more liberal minded, and how have we contributed to this problem, and what can we do to solve it. But obviously I'm speaking to everybody here, because there is no left or right. You need a left and a right wing to fly. But I want to talk about the deeper problem that I see, another pandemic, which is a pandemic of very disturbed and wounded young men, or young and old men. And one of the things that we often talk about, I have a community full of, being in the spiritual and transformational world, I've coached and trained, probably 70+% of my audience has been women. And for a good reason. Women need all the support and all the love and all the encouragement to have their voice, to take a stand, to be empowered, to be able to be truly leaders, and to have all the opportunity to thrive as men have. No doubt about it. That's 100% my stance. And the challenge is that, as we often always do, is we overcorrect, right? We do it in all areas, but we tend to, the activist mindset tends to get captured by the ego and tends to become another way to have a sense of power, and often to compensate for trauma and for wounds. We take it too far and we make another enemy out of it. And so over the last decade or two, we have made men the enemy. And in particular, white men, but we'll just say men in general. And it's with comes with very, very dire consequences. And we've done it just in a general sense in terms of the movement, the racial movement to, empower people of color, black people, all kinds of people, gay men versus straight men. We've done a lot of really good work to empower people that have been in the minority, and have not had the same level of rights, have had violence against them. And we absolutely, again, I know I have to be so specific, maybe not with this audience, but maybe that I'm 100% stand for that. Having gay children and, and having grown up in a spiritual community of at least 3/4 African American, I'm a very, very strong stance for all the, and again, 70+% women in this community, for all the people that have been considered in the minority, that have not been given the same level of privilege and opportunity throughout history. We absolutely have to level the playing field, and we absolutely have to create an environment where there's an equality of opportunity, not an equality of outcome, because we cannot guarantee that, unfortunately, no matter what we do. But we can work towards an equality of opportunity. So I'm 100% for that. The problem is the overcompensation and the memes and the mentality and the consciousness, even towards a good intention and a good effort, has created a very negative environment for men, for white men, and and some people might say, well, it serves them right, the patriarchy and the toxic masculinity. Look at all the damage it's done. There's truth to that. Men have largely built the world structure and the world order, but guess what? Men will also burn it to the ground, as we see, right? They'll blow it to shreds. They'll burn it to the ground. And so we need to get men on our side, all right? We need the white men too. And I'm not just speaking as a person who happens to have that color skin. That's not the point here. It's that we need to understand what we're missing. And that by making an enemy out of anybody or anything, you give it more power. You give the power of that image of an enemy more power. And you are creating a story and a myth and an energetic field that is increasingly has a downward pressure and a negative pressure on all of these men, many of which are in power and will abuse that power, or many of which who have very little seeming power, who then have to find some way to get their voice back, their power back, and understand that violence is the voice of the inarticulate. Violence is what we do when we can't find our voice, when we don't feel heard, when we don't feel understood. We either act out outside in violence, or we act upon ourselves with violence. And we've created a culture that is perpetuating and even producing tremendous shame in men, tremendous guilt in men. And let me just help you understand if you don't. Because again, the focus has been, it looks like men have all the power and men are running the world, and they're so privileged. But men statistically and historically kill themselves way more often, die way more often, die of diseases sooner, and kill each other way more often. Men live in much more dangerous and riskier lives historically. And men have been as brainwashed as women have been about what a man is and what a man should be. They've been brainwashed by society, and they've also felt the tremendous pressure from other men and from other women, just as women have. But we've talked, quite a lot about the lies and the hypnotic spells about women and what's a woman, and a woman can't be strong, or she's a bitch, or a woman. Let's again be clear. There's plenty of that for women, and we need to wake up from that, and as I already said, empower women, etc. Right? But we have to remember there's another whole side to the story here, And it's going to come back and bite us, as we see, if we don't integrate that. And the other side of the story is that men have been just as brainwashed. Big boys don't cry. Men aren't still feel safe to show their feelings. But there's another side to it. In this new environment where it's actually wrong to be masculine, it's wrong to be powerful. So now we have a whole nother breed of men who are feeling guilt and shame for some of the impulses, the protector, the provider, right? The sexual impulse, these things that are so strong in men evolutionarily. It's not Bob's fault, right? It's evolution. It's evolution, and we're being told those are all bad things or dangerous things or wrong things, or at the very least, we're being given very mixed and confused messages. And we are being operated by evolutionary code. Some of it's not great computer code, but it's code nonetheless. And Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they do. And there's a degree to which that is absolutely true. And that's true for everybody. Men, women, black, white, all races, all colors, all creeds. We're run by bad code. We're run by code we don't understand. And when your computer is running a bad program, if you're semi-conscious, you don't throw your computer out the window. You try to find a way to change the program, right? You don't smash your computer. Maybe some of you do. I know I felt that way some days. But the same thing is true for us, and the same thing is true for men. Evolutionarily, the masculine of the species, the male of a species, again, this isn't a man, this isn't an ego, it's the male of the species. It has understood biologically and evolutionarily its survival depends on the woman, because this perpetuation of its gene has everything to do with is that female of the species going to choose that male, whether it's a monkey or a bird or whatever, right? And so as a result, the male of the species has had to develop all kinds of abilities and skills and talents. And so, the male of the species that sings the best, that dances the best, that has the most beautiful feathers or fur, all of which show the female that this male is healthy, this male is strong, this male is capable. Again, it's not a thought thing. The female bird isn't thinking, well, that guy's pretty hot and he looks pretty smart. It's all happening below mind. It's all happening evolutionarily, biologically, instinctively. But also that male that has the most resources, right? So the male with the most resources, the male with the greatest strength, the greatest sign of leadership, the alpha, the male with the most beautiful feathers or fur, the male that can do the dance or the song. Literally, the males of the species had to do a song and dance, right? They get picked. And we're talking generally speaking. We're not saying there's never mating in nature that is against, that's not voluntary. But generally speaking, it's the male has evolutionarily adapted to be the one that gets picked. Now we know there's obviously men that are also choosing women, but I want you to understand this key piece here, because if you wonder why the males of human species can seem pretty crazy and are conquering the world and accumulating resources and building giant towers with their name on them, and all of that is evolutionary. Look at me, I deserve to be picked. Look at me, I'm worthy of my gene being perpetuated. And so that's going on an evolutionary level. Now, I'm not condoning bad behavior, believe me, but if we don't have an understanding of it, we're going to keep personalizing it. We're going to keep perpetuating, especially this progressive crowd that wants growth and progress, but often at the cost of the part of the culture that we think is the problem, that is bad. And so we make men and white men bad. And now we've just added fuel to the fire, because men were already dying and killing themselves and killing each other at record rates historically. Now let's just make them feel really, really bad and shamed and guilty and back them in a corner, politically, socially, or otherwise, right? Economically, etc. And make them feel even worse. Now what are they going to do? Now, of course, a man that is more conscious, that is, has had enough resources, that they're more resourceful in that situation, they may actually self-reflect, and they may actually realize, you know what, I need to clean up my stuff. I need to get right with myself. I need to take responsibility. That's 1% of the population. But a large percentage of the population does not have that capacity. They don't hear all of that and go, let me really self reflect and think about how, as a man, I really am part of the problem and I need to grow. How many people do you think do that? All of you that are conscious people watching this right now, how often do you find yourself doing that, honestly? We have to have a little humility here. And we have to recognize that we're creating worse and worse conditions for men. And the natural result of that is not going to be a bunch of young boys going, oh my God, I see the light. It's going to be a bunch of young boys going, what's the effing point? And screw you. And I'm going to show you just how powerful I am. Or combine that with the Instagram famous culture, where everybody's looking for their 15 minutes or their 15 likes. And these shooters are copycat shooters, and they're on these, dark web boards looking at each other's stuff and figuring out ways to top each other. So it's become a game, it's become a video game, it's become a contest. Add that on top of the need for fame, the need to be seen, the need to be respected, the need to be known, as well as the video game culture and the competitive culture and all of those Western values, on top of the deep, wounded, and broken understanding that men already have about themselves. That is a bomb waiting to go off. And it is going off. It's going off in Russia. It's going off in the Ukraine. It's going off in a pandemic of shootings, terrorism, all these things at the root. The incel movement of men that are involuntary celibate because they can't get a date or they can't be chosen. And the rage and the pain and the powerlessness that breeds in them, that they then take out on, let me show you my power. And you're either going to get a society of men that are blowing up or that are imploding. Men that are acting their power out on the world, or they are self-castrating and they become impotent. And for all of you women who actually need strong men, strong enough to hold your wild feminine, strong enough to hold the infinitude of the divine feminine. You don't want a bunch of men walking around, castrated. That's not the lesson here, right? And so, and the men, for you men, you don't want to just be a nice guy. The masculine, just like the feminine has the Kali, has the destroyer, and all these different elements. The mother and the devouring mother has the fierce priestess and the divine goddess of love. All of those are in the female. They're in the male too. There is the protector and the killer, the destroyer. There is the monster. There is the lover, the healer, the father, the son, the Peter Pan. These are all inside the male too. And we don't make any of those wrong, or we will create a monster we have no ability or understanding to manage. But instead, we have to make friends with the monster. We have to integrate the monster. We have to have the monster on our team. The protector, the provider, the destroyer, the lover, the healer, all of those, so that we have the strength to hold life as it seeks to emerge. We have the humility that great strength can give you, real strength. Like if you've ever met a real master martial artist, not just some guy that's trying to prove how strong he is, but a true master, they never fight. First of all, they have no need to fight or prove anything because they know what's inside them. And there's a calmness and there's a humility, a deep humility. It's not John Wayne swagger. It's a deep humility, right? And so that's the kind of men we want to develop. Men that have access to their full power, men that have understood the sexual impulses because the masculine had to spread its seed and had to have its gene be picked, and was the farmer spreading its seed of the evolutionary story, and learn how to understand it, not through shame and blame and pain, but through love and understanding and patience and wisdom. The destructive power, the life-giving power, the lover, the healer, all of it integrated as the divine masculine, fully embodied, that is capable when needed to protect, right? That is capable when needed to perpetuate the species, that has that instrument, that has all of that integrated. If we don't do that, and if we don't start having that conversation with young boys and young men and older men, and for all of you men with yourself, and for all of you women with your men, and for all of you women within yourself and your own divine masculine, if we don't begin to heal the shame and the guilt and the blame and the judgment and the projection, there will not be strong men. There will be strong men, like in the mafia, right? There will be weak, broken, traumatized men that are completely captured by the ego and are seeking to conquer and conquer and conquer and continue to repress the feminine and create unsustainable structures. And that's best case scenario. That's best case. And then the more technology that they devise as a way to conquer and gather resources and be driven by the evolutionary impulse to be the one that is chosen, they will build a world that you do not even want to imagine. And we see it happening, right? So that's one scenario, or they will just blow the world up. Those are the two scenarios we're looking at. If we don't start to have this conversation, we will not see a decline in school shootings just because we put a few bans on a certain kind of gun. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that's not going to solve it. We will not see a reduction in harassment or a greater expression of the masculine and the feminine, men and women, the relationships, merely by cancel culture or Me Too movements or any of that. We won't. There's a value to all these movements, and then it goes too far and it becomes a projection, it becomes a shadow movement, it becomes driven from a need for power, from a wound, and then it creates more pain. Just like the religious movements, started with the seed of inspiration and revelation, and then it becomes an industrialized complex. It becomes more about feeding the machine and keeping it alive than serving the inspiration. Same with all of the activist and social movements. At some point, they become a machine, and then inadvertently, we serve the machine instead of the true mission. I'm not saying everybody, I'm just talking about systemically. Okay? And the same thing is true, and it's happening now with cancel culture and with the way we talk about men, and especially white men, and nothing but more pain and suffering will come from that. And we can see it happening country to country. We can see it happening culture to culture. It's going to create more pain and suffering. And again, I'm not saying there's not real change to be made, that men don't need to be held accountable. Everybody needs to be held accountable for the things that they are doing that are destructive. But as Gandhi said, love the sinner, hate the sin. Don't hate the sinner. And Jesus said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's bad code. As I like to tell a story of the fish that is swimming in a school of fish, and one fish is just acting out, being such a jerk, and he's butting into everybody, and he's cutting in line, and he just won't listen to reason. He's just a complete asshole. And finally the fish, they try, and they form a movement, against this guy, and they finally just say, forget it, we're out of here. And the whole school of fish abandons this guy, this fish guy. And only to reveal he was caught on a hook the whole time. So what I want you to understand is that we're all caught on hooks, on beliefs of separation, lack, limitation, worry, doubt, fear, lack of self-worth and self-love, a belief that men are this and women are that and black is this and white is that and trans and gay and this and that and left and right and Republican and Dem, all of these hypnotic spells and beliefs that have little to nothing to do with truth and reality, and just further drive us into these shadow lands where we're in shadow dancing and shadow boxing with each other. And we need to begin to take a breath, step back, look deeper. Yes, deal with the surface stuff that you have to. Triage is necessary. Be a good steward of resources. If somebody is danger to themselves or each other, they need to be in jail perhaps. But even if you close the door of the cell, do not close the door of your heart. Love your enemy. How many times? 70 times 7, I believe the guy said. What does that mean? As many times as it takes, until all you have is compassion and have wisdom. Do you understand? Now that's a bitter pill to swallow, right? It's extremely bitter. But most medicine is bitter. And if we're going to turn the poison of these very limited and fear-based and wounded perceptions of ourselves and each other, of men, of women, of black, of white, if we're going to turn those poisonous perceptions into any kind of medicine, then we have to learn to meet those places within ourselves where we're projecting it out there or in here, to learn how to hold those parts of ourselves, to seek to truly understand them, to have patience, compassion, and to heal them, to integrate them. And we just generally need to want to get to the truth that sets us free and helps us create a world that works for the highest good of all, more than we want to be expedient or comfortable, or more than we want to be right, or make somebody wrong, or make money. No. That path leads to destruction, as we see. I'm not trying to be a downer here. This is the energy of the prophet. We have to take full responsibility for this. Every place where you judge men, every place where you judge those parts of yourself, every place where you're looking to blame somebody, stop and take responsibility for that energy. Because here's the key. The key to abundance is the law of circulation. What are you circulating? Because whatever you're circulating, you're creating an abundance of that. If you're circulating love, compassion, understanding, wisdom, patience for yourself and for others, you are creating an abundance of the qualities that nurture the emergence of a world that ultimately heals and works for all. If you are circulating anger, hate, revenge, sadness, fear, greed, grief, and that's, I'm not saying you can't have those feelings, but if you are unconsciously or even intentionally circulating that, you are creating an abundance of the conditions that will cause more weeds to grow, that will cause more fear, more separation, more lack of limitation, and more destruction. It's simple as that. What are you circulating? Or to put it in terms of a pandemic, what are you spreading? What virus? Are you spreading the virus of love? Are you making love go viral? Or are you making fear and hate and anger and judgment and polarization and separation go viral? And I know most of you will be like, Derek, why are you talking about me, man? I'm with you. Maybe. I've been doing this work for 25 years or more. I've been through some very dark nights, and I can tell you, I'm having to take more responsibility today than I did 25 years ago. So that's what and I don't mean responsibility like this heavy burden. I mean like this joyful labor of love, this sacred opportunity to wake up to the truth about you, to the truth about everybody. The truth will set us free. At first, it'll piss us off, and it'll scare the crap out of us, and it'll annihilate us. But then, it's freedom, baby. So I hope this serves you. Actually, I'm just going to play a little clip. I just started writing a song. I didn't know I was going to do this. This is the first time I've ever done this, by the way. So don't judge me. But just a little clip of it called How Many More? It's sort of a response to. By the way, I don't know if the sound will be good or anything, so please forgive me if it's just distorted and terrible, but I figure I'll give it a shot. It's called How Many More? And it's about, inspired by the shooting and what's going on in the world. How many more do we have to lose before we finally see the light? While all our dreams are washed away in tears we've cried. How much longer must we fight? How many more? Say goodbye while we bury all our pain and close our eyes. How many more have to die? How many more? How many more? How many more? So that's just a little bit of a chorus. Working on it. You'll hear it someday, maybe. Hopefully you could hear it on this video, because again, I don't have any idea how this particular technology works with sound and music. But just think about that. How many more? What's it going to take? How much more pain do we have to be in, or do others have to be in, before we wake up and take full responsibility for ending the suffering? First within ourselves, and then for others around us. I really love and appreciate you. I don't know how long I've been talking. I just felt the need to share, and I hope it serves you, and I hope it serves all of us. And until next time, remember to live authentically, love unconditionally, and follow your destiny. Take care.